tonight, we seek your blessing to be with us, to lead us in the fullness and goodness of living life. Help us, by your Spirit, to be wise people, to live our life in ways of bringing forth the holiness for us, ourselves, and others. May we be open to the goodness of your presence to be with us, that has claimed to be a compassionate care for us always. We trust in your promise that you will be with us always in our life journey. We make our prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay. Do you have another one of those papers? Okay. I'd like to start off tonight with a biblical reflection. It goes back to Jesus went into the synagogue on a Sabbath, and while he was in the synagogue on the Sabbath, he looked and he saw a woman come in who was bent over and hunched and came in. And the Lord saw her and he says, you've been this way for 18 years. So let me bless you and heal you so that you may stand up straight and see the glory of God, which means to see him face to face. So that movement and that light of it, I'm just going to use that as a parallel to ourselves at times when we go through life. Sometimes we get burdens that get very heavy and we get stooped over. And what happens when we get stooped over? Our vision gets caught and just seeing the ground. We don't see what's around us. We don't see sometimes people who are with us. And we kind of get caught in this sad place of being where we can't enter into the fullness of living life. So when we come tonight, I just want to move with this sense of what are those burdens sometimes that hit us that just bend us over. And we don't get free and we don't see the goodness of life to be lived because we've been overwhelmed by something in our life that has caused us some kind of difficulty. Now the movement for us as we've been here is to talk about anxiety. And anxiety can get to be a pressure for us. And sometimes it can stoop us over. So same thing with the idea of worriment, tension, depression. All those things that come at us can get heavy burdens to carry around unless we can find a way to get freed from them. So we're going to take a look at this invitation that Jesus has. His desire is that we get free. The desire is we get free. And for ourselves in the journey of life, one of the movements that Jesus says we can get free is to live by the truth. Live by the truth. The truth will set you free. That's an important facet of being able to look at reality as we see it and be able to see it clearly in a truthful way. Now there's a movement of our life that can stop that from happening. We've been talking about that, and that is we have these voices that come at us and start saying something in a way that's not true. And sometimes we accept them and believe them and we live by them, and some of us get crippled by them. And as soon as that starts happening, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. So what movement is, when those voices come at us, there's a feeling associated with a negative kind of condemning voice that alerts our spirit to say, something's not right here. Something's not right here. So anxiety is one of those great gifts that God gives us as a feeling to be attentive. Something's not right here. And so we stop and we look at what are the voices saying in some kind of way that are creating this feeling that I'm experiencing that is the reason for why I'm in trouble. But to take a look at the movement of life is that when we go through life, we're not the problem. We're not the problem. What is the problem, though, is what afflicts us, what comes at us. What sometimes speaks to us in a way that somehow doesn't allow us to see the truth and live by it and be free to find a sense of peacefulness and joyfulness of life. So this is this invitation to say that, what do we do? What do we do when we have those kind of feelings that come at us? The one thing we've got to be careful about is not to bury them, or not to regress with them. I keep telling you, my regression into a feeling is, put me on a tall building, and let me look over. I'm not just afraid, I become frightened. I become the feeling. And that's a regression back to childhood. Children are their feelings. When we grow up, when adults, we have feelings. But when sometimes an overwhelming pressure comes at us, we can regress and become that feeling. And so It's important that we address it in some kind. Like if I were to just stand on a patio on the 9th floor of a hotel building or a condo and look down, I'm not going to be able to sit on that patio. It's going to be way too uncomfortable. Matter of fact, I might even freeze because I'll panic in that light of anxiety that takes over, and I become the feeling, I become anxious. I just don't feel anxious. So there's a movement for me to have this discussion with myself and saying, okay, let me listen to you. And then it's like the kid inside that's really speaking when we go that way. Our feelings come from the kid inside. And so I have to talk to the kids. And then I'll have to bring an adult kind of reasonable presence. It's safe out there. Matter of fact, if you don't like it out here, let's step back and go inside and we'll sit down. If this is too uncomfortable, we won't do that. And maybe a little later on we might come out and sit out there, knowing that the fact that our reason can help us to say that it is safe. There's no reason to be really upset about it. It's a safe place to be. But until I can find out that safety, I'm going to sit in the far back of the room and just not go near that balcony. Huh? But it is to have a sense of being conscious. So one of the things that we say in the movement of journey, this comes from a lot of cognitive theory of psychology, is that be careful about the feelings that come at you by doing two things: rejecting them or suppressing them, or trying to get away from them. As soon as we start trying to get away from them, somehow they won't get better. They'll only get worse. Until we can face the difficulties that this anxiety for me is asking me to be attentive to, so that I can address it in a reasonable way about the truthfulness of what's happening. Is this safe, not safe? Huh? If you can make sure that I know it's safe, then I'll be comfortable. And sometimes the anxiety is there to help us. Some places aren't safe, huh? And so we want to be cautious, huh? But I don't want to become so uncomfortable that somehow I panic and wind up becoming anxious rather than just feeling anxious about the situation. It's a strange thing. Father Soldier is not here now, but so I can tell on him now. But he used to have this sense of driving it sometimes, and all of a sudden he'd become anxious. He'd have a panic attack. And so he had to drive, he had to pull over on the side of the road, sit there, and wait until he felt comfortable again, and his anxiety settled, and he could come back to the fact that he knows how to drive. I can drive. It's okay. There might be a lot of traffic, but I'm okay. As soon as he gets himself put together again, then he can drive on. But if he didn't have that sense of trying to deal with the anxiety, he would have became anxious and had a panic attack. So the movement is, when we have feelings, it's really helpful to embrace them. The reason why we want to embrace them is because they actually come from God, for me. One of the ways God communicates with us is through the feelings we have. And so God will tug at us to help us to know that movement of our spirit. Is it living in a truthful way, or is it living in a distorted form of life? The distortions will take life away from us when we start living by them. The distortions will not help us at all. And then we talked about that imagery about what we'd like to do is we'd like to chase them away, or we'd like to repress them, or however we can get rid of them, but not to deal with them in a way of inviting them in as a gift from God to help me to be attentive, to deal with some kind of distortions that's in my life, so that I can live in truth and not in some kind of distorted thought way of life. So I talked about the little tiger that came to the door, and the person said, I didn't like this tiger, get rid of it. Every time it feeded, it would go away. Kept feeding it, kept going away. Till later on, after a long time of feeding it, it was no longer little. It became and devoured the woman who was trying to feed it to go away. So you have to be careful about not accepting those feelings. If we can have this movement about this identification, there's something good about that. I know I threw people off. People will come in and say, I'm really feeling, I'm depressed. I said, boy, that's wonderful. If you're depressed, if you're experiencing it, you're feeling it. Because the issue is, The feeling of depression is not the problem. The feeling of anxiety is not the problem. It's what's causing it that is. And what's behind causing these feelings that we have are the thoughts we have in our head that are framing what we're looking at or where we are. So that movement of looking for what God is trying to help me to do is to say, step back, pray the feeling. I pray the feeling. Lord, what are you asking me to be aware of by this feeling that I'm experiencing? What's the thoughts behind it that are happening? And how is it that I can address those thoughts? Because an uncomfortable feeling will come from a distorted thought. So that's just the movement of awareness that we might have insofar as the invitation of God helping us to move in a way that begins to have this sense of dealing with what God is inviting us to be attentive to by the feelings that we're having. So there's that movement. We just pause and just have that kind of an awareness. That if we can practice with that too. If we're feeling good, we can just start, oh, what are the thoughts that I'm having that help me to feel good? I'm watching the Eagles and they just won, huh? So that thought that the Eagles win, that's a good thing. If the Eagles lost, oh God, I have a bad thought about the Eagles losing, so I don't have that such of an elated feeling, huh? Or Notre Dame, I could say Notre Dame too, huh? In that light. So the thoughts we have about what's going on around us really structure the way we feel. So if we're not feeling good, then one of the things is we have these distorted thoughts that come at us. Now, one of the things about my sense of picturing distorted thoughts is they often come in forms of voices. We all have kind of voices in our head. And they're almost automatic. They come up almost automatically. And they'll say things almost without our even prompting them, because they're just conditioned to be there all the time. And when something comes up, they begin to set up how to think about what's happening. And oftentimes there's this internal critic that's in us that's really negative, that really captures us. I was speaking with someone today, lost her sense of goodness, lost her sense of identity. Huh? And what was her sense about? Well, I kind of grew up a loser, and so I'm a loser. So the thoughts of saying I'm a loser, that'll be crippling. Or the fact that I'm not good enough. That was her other thing. I'm not good enough for people. I work hard, but I just never seem to get there. I'm not good enough. So people really don't like me because I can't meet the expectations that they have of me. So there's that movement of journey that we just stop and just, you can ask that feeling. How do we feel about ourselves? Do we feel like we're wonderful people? We're good people? Life is good? If we do, we're surely following the invitation of God to define life for us and our sense of self, because God tells us, who are we? If that's good, and I always think that's the better way to start living life. If I can move by the definition of God as a voice, not as his up voices at me that are critical and negative and are distorted. We'll look at the distortions. But that movement, if I can embrace that, I feel good. Huh? I feel good about the fact that God loves me. God embraces me. God desires that I live life in goodness and fullness and joy. They're good things. So I'm with God on all that. However, if you stop and say, can you embrace that? Or is there something that stops you from being able to be defined by God that has another definition that jumps in there that just takes all that away? Like I said, you're not good enough. You're a loser. You're always screwing up. All those kinds of voices that come at us take away the sense of good life. Now, one of the things about this idea of feeling good, or feeling good comes really by looking at the gifts of the Holy Spirit. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are kind of indicators that we're living a good life. I'm like, just take a look at it: joy, peace, thankfulness, faithfulness, patience. All those great gifts of the Spirit, if we can embrace them, life is really good. So it's not so much that we have to make them happen. The one thing that really moves us in some kind of way for that is the fact that if we get rid of all the distortions, we'll feel good. Huh? We don't have to go out and try and make ourselves happy, or make ourselves joyful, or make ourselves feel peaceful. Now, Jesus just says, my peace is different than that. Huh? It's the peace that comes when you're free from distortions and you can embrace the definitions of who you are by what God says about you. Now, that's a very important facet to ground ourselves in. Always ground ourselves in that movement. So that when we come up and look at the issues that come in our life, we're not the problem. Huh? We're not the problem. There's problems out there, a lot of them, many of them, but we're not the problem as far as God's concerned. What becomes part of the problem are these voices. Huh? And like to move the voices are like the ones in the, they were around in Genesis, huh? Where'd the voice come from that messed everything up, huh? The serpent came, huh? Hey, I got a thing for you, huh? Hey, you can become like God, huh? Just follow what I say. And that voice that came that tricked them out of a place where they were in contentment took them down a bad path, huh? They ate of the tree of knowledge, huh? And so they thought the knowledge was they thought that they could become like God. Or they thought that there was a better life than what they were living. And that was only being called for by the sense of a distracted voice called Beelzebub. Huh? Now, Beelzebub has that nice little definition. It's the father of lies. Huh? So the movement of our life can be caught up with these lies that come at us that will affect how we feel and how we see ourselves, or how we see ourselves, then how we feel. And so God has this sense of, well, when that voice speaks and it has some kind of power in your life, it's going to feel uncomfortable. So we have all these great feelings that come up, like anxiety, like anger, depression, tension, all those kinds of experiences, feelings of, they're all God's gift to say, hey, you're not living a life according to a truthful way of living. You're caught up in some kind of lie that's moving you in some kind of live by some distortion that's really upsetting your life as you live it. So we move with this kind of awareness, huh, that how life is God created us to enter into this life and live by it. And so God has gifted us, again, with this sense of feelings. They're God's way of communicating. It's like God tugging at you. Huh? Hey, pay attention, pay attention. And so we move in that light to respond and ask God, what are you asking me to be aware of by the way I feel? It can be a joyful thing. It can be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be tension. It can be a lot of things, that movement that these so-called voices are creating for us in the way that we feel. And to know that the voices, here's another thing, is the voices are not us. A lot of times people come in and say, I really don't like myself. I said, what do you mean you don't like yourself? Yeah, I look at myself and I don't like myself. And I'll just ask the question, is that the way you want to be? Do you want to not like yourself? No, it's not that I don't want to like myself, but I don't like myself. Well, then that part of saying you don't like yourself isn't coming from you because you don't want to be that way. So it's a good thing to move with that sense of invitation that when you're feeling something, say, Jesus, is this the way I want to feel? Is this the way I want to see life? Is this the way I want to live? And my sense is, whoa, if it's not that way, then somehow something's taking over, pushing me in a way to live life. It's not wholesome for me. It's not wholesome for me. And it gets into some kind of ways of habits and even addictions. So we can get into that. A lot of workaholics who can't stop because they got to work, because that's the only way they have a sense of identifying themselves. And so that gets to be something of a problem when they don't work. The voices come out and say, oh, you're screwing up now, you're screwing up, you're not going to be successful, whatever else it might be. But at least they come in and they take over, mess our life up, and take us down a path that's just not good for us. So that's one thing about this movement of just being conscious of the fact that there are these voices that come at us. But the other thing is to have this sense of a self-concept of ourselves. recognize that I am not my voices that come at me. Huh? At least they're not the ones that are distorted. That's not me. Because I can just ask that question. Is that how I want to see life? That's how I want to live? This is how I want to feel going through life? I say, no, we don't want to do that. Then it just comes back to say, well, that's not me, then it's coming from someplace else. And the problem with this is that a lot of these voices are unconscious, huh? They're unconscious. They just seem, I just feel that way. Why do you feel that? I just feel that way. Oh, I say, well, what are the voices? Well, I don't know how to feel. I just feel bad. We don't have a sense of being able to capture the voices that are behind what the feeling has unless we take some kind of opportunity to step back and then to discern that and look at it in a clearer way. So far so good? Yeah.
And if it needs to be taken offline, just tell
All
me.
right.
But have you ever heard the saying, you're only as happy as your saddest kid?
Only happy as what?
As your saddest child.
You're only as happy as
You're
yourself.
only as happy as your saddest child. So if you have multiple children, you're only as happy as your saddest.
Wow, that's dangerous.
Exactly. But what I'm struggling is, I don't know that if I see my kid struggling,
Yeah.
do you, I don't know if I can call it a distortion. It seems
No, there's real things that happen. Yeah.
so, okay, I'm gonna maybe not make that that child's problems mine, but then you just get guilt over
Yeah.
bending over with their burden.
Okay. So people do have problems, huh? And I do have feelings about their problems. I don't like a lot of their problems. I don't like the injustice that happens to people. I get angry at it. And I get upset with it. And I would like to be able to do that. Have that come back and say something about me as me being bad, huh? Or me being not doing the right thing, or I'm feeling guilty. If you're feeling guilty, okay, let me say that. If you're feeling guilty, you got a distortion. About yourself, that is, if I feel bad about myself. Because I didn't do something, or I should have done something, all those other things. That would be a distortion. I can feel guilty. Okay, let me make another road in here that I think is an important distinction to make. Huh? Not only are the voices speak, but also I have to watch out for my behaviors. Huh? I do things, huh? But sometimes I do things, like I do stupid things. I do stupid things. I do a lot of stupid things. But I'm not stupid, huh? I can do bad things, but I'm not bad. I can deny Jesus, but still be okay. Peter. Okay? So we need to be careful about not identifying ourselves with our behaviors in that way that we take them on as a definition of ourselves. Remember, the definition comes from God. If that conjures that definition from God, I'd be very careful about what that's saying. Huh? So if my kid's struggling, huh? I say, wow, okay. It moves me to say, what can I do for my kid to help them in their journey? But if I say, oh, my kid's struggling, it must be me. I'm bad me. We're in trouble. Okay. And they could be doing something because of bad things I've done, but I'm not bad. I just can't keep bringing that back. And guilt is the identification of a bad behavior, defining me as being bad. I can feel guilt's good when I do a bad thing, and I want to feel guilty about that, but not me. Okay? That make sense? Okay, that's that idea of not making this kind of jump. Joanne?
I was going to say, Bob, you put this in a really so much more beautiful perspective, because going back in the day,
Yeah.
going back in the day and going to Catholic school, I was taught that you should never be angry. Don't be angry at her.
Yeah.
You should never do this, and you should never do that.
Yeah. Okay.
It was so, I think, detrimental in a way to a lot of us, but your perspective on it has kind of shifted.
Okay, now you're bringing up one of my other favorite distortions. Should, have to, must, and ought. Like you should be this way. Huh? You should do it this way. Shoulds really become a distortion. God doesn't have any shoulds on me. I don't have to do something that God says I should do for God to love me. Because God's going to love me always. Huh? And I can't, matter of fact, I can't do something to make God love me. although sometimes we think we can do that. We think we have that power to do that. I'd like to get freed from that so that I can have this worriment about, oh my God, I did something, God's not going to love me anymore. No, God's always going to love you, but not like your behavior. He's going to invite you not to like that behavior because it's an injustice to someone or to yourself. So we've got to be conscious of that movement of journey that leads us into a way of movement with this God presence that's with us, that's trying to help us to recognize these distortions that jump in there that really mess our life up. One of them are the shoulds. Huh? Now, the problem is, when we're children, we have a lot of shoulds. Huh? Well, and maybe rightly so, okay? Because in that way of thinking, children think in this kind of give and take way. Huh? That's their framework. Huh? They don't have the power to abstract and step back and look at something. It's kind of immediate. I mean, most parents will try to train their kids by rewards, and you do a good thing today, you're going to have that. You can get a popsicle or whatever it is. You can get treated. And along the way, that's the child. That's not bad in some kind of way. Huh? It helps us to say things that we are not to do and things we do. But because their framework of life is a 101 issue, it's either, and it's pretty much immediate. Huh? You get immediate rewards. You can't tell the kid, you do this and I'll give you, and then 5 days from now I'll give you an ice cream cone. And that ain't going to work. They're all in the moment and they're caught up in the thing. We get kind of lost with being in the moment. But there's a sense of that reward and punishment issue about kids, huh? For behaviors, huh? And the important part is we need to be, as adults, not caught up in our way of looking at their life by identifying their bad behavior with them. It's always important that we say, I can never be angry at my child. Matter of fact, I can't be angry at anybody. I keep saying that. But I can be angry at what they do. So it's really helpful that when you have a kid, say, I'm really angry that you just did that. But as soon as you can, I'm really angry at you, now they feel like there's something bad about them. And then the other thing that happens in that light, if we're not careful, we get dependent on our kids for us to feel good. I got a good kid. Look at that, my kid does everything right. Hey, good me, right? I use my kid to make me feel good. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Huh? But it's good for the kid to act in a good way. Not for my sake, but for the sake of himself in this journey with relationships with the world and other people and God. So there's this movement of invitation for us to be conscious of that way we treat people. And even as we get adults, huh, we can go back to childish behavior. Huh? It's very simple. I like going back. I like regressing at times. Regressing for me would be going back and fighting. See, I used to like to fight. and the trouble was, it's like football competition. Yeah, give me a football. You try that. I was good at that. So I was pretty good at that. Huh? So I like living that way. But as an adult, it doesn't work. Huh? Adult, it doesn't work. I'm not here to try and get into some kind of contest. Huh? Some kind of contest. Although I used to like it when Tom Delia, my good friend, would come over. We'd sit on the porch, and he'd spark up. He was a great athlete, and I was an athlete, so spark up that competition up, huh? And whatever the competition is, we're on the other end of it. Who's going to win this game? Who's going to win this? God. And then we give up and say, hey, this is senseless arguing about this. It's not getting us anywhere, and also it's messing us up in our relationship with one another. So yeah, we just back off. But for the moment, I like to regress back to some of that every once in a while. However, the movement of it is it just doesn't work in the long run. Huh? It's like the movement that I have with my sister. Huh? And it's good to have conversations about things, but not to get so tied up in them that somehow it's a win-lose kind of situation. My sister and I, they start talking politics, my sister and I, and she's a, how would I say this? She's a controlling person. Huh? She wants everything her way and the way it is. And if you're not following her way, bad you, and you're not going to be okay until I convince you that I'm right and you follow what I say. I don't know, you might know some of those people, I don't know. Well, so I would get there and I said, I said, Kathy, I just don't see it that way. That's not the way I see it. What do you mean you don't see it that way? How come you can't see it that way? I just don't see it that way. And she gets so frustrated, she starts crying. And then I say, hey, Kathleen, I says, this is ridiculous. We're crying over something. There's something more important here than this argument about politics. Our relationship is more important than the politics. So how about you and I, we get together, we just don't talk politics. Because it's too much of a battle. It's not a conversation. So I says, okay. And it's a win or lose kind of thing. So my sister and I get along well. We do. Every time we get together, and we don't talk politics. Okay? So there's no doubt. Now she might have another thing she's right on that she's going to prove everybody to tell her. But that we can deal with that in a little better way, I think, as we go along. But that movement of journey is that way. So one of the things that we started to do, and this is a thing that we started to take a look at, is what are these distortions that sneak in the way we begin to see things that create problems for us? They make us uneasy. Or we don't have, what it is they're not truthful. And since they're not truthful, they're distorted, we start living a distorted life. Huh? Now, there's 10 of them on a paper you have there. I gave it out before, but it's like the first one was all or nothing. Huh? Now, you could probably go online and just look for the idea of the 10 cognitive distortions. Huh? And they can throw a lot of this, but all or nothing thinking. And when we do this, one of the things that's helpful to do is be attentive to your language. Huh? Be attentive to your language. Because your language is coming from the unconscious of how you've been taught to frame things. And you can frame them that way and not even know you're doing it. It just seems like it's natural. Isn't this the way everybody talks? There's one there. There's a distortion. Everybody, huh? Everybody, nobody. All, nothing. Huh? All those kinds of, all those are wind up being just setting us up for distortion because they're not true. Huh? That all or nothing happening. Huh? We go up there. Everybody's really a mess. All those Democrats are dummies. All those independents don't know what they're doing. Everybody has a problem. But when we start doing that, we just lump everything together, and it's not true. Like, not all Democrats are bad. Not all Republicans are bad. Not all independents are bad. Huh? They're probably good people. They have an ideology. That might be bad in some kind of way if they look at it. But they're not bad, huh? They're not bad. We lump them together like that, and as soon as we start setting this either-or kind of framework up, we're going to have a fight. We're going to have a fight. Huh? Rather than it's both and. Huh? Like I would say, government officials, they're both good and they have troubles. Huh? And it's not that they're all bad and all good. You have to be one or the other. No, it's good to be open to the fact that other people have something to say that's worthwhile, even though they're not in my camp. Huh? So, all or nothing thinking. But capture that. Just sometimes you'll catch yourself saying every, none, all, everybody, nobody. Those words are setting up a distorted way of looking at whatever we're trying to deal with. I don't know if you want to go through them. Is it helpful to go through these? Quickly. I don't know how I got them set up here. Okay, overgeneralization. Okay. We can overgeneralize, huh? One thing happens and we take it, that's the way it's always going to be. It's going to be that way, huh? I went out and applied for a job. They didn't hire me. I'm never going to get hired. Just because of one incident of that happening, huh? I called a girl up for a date and she said no. Oh, I'm never going to call another girl up again, huh? because that one incident just carries over. That's where it's always going to be. We overgeneralize it in some kind of way. So somehow we can get caught in that, in things about our life, and we can get stuck. Huh? We can get stuck. We can have a bad experience or something. Huh? I can say to somebody, let's go sailboating. And you go up, and all of a sudden the wind blows up and everything else, and things are flying all over the place, and somebody says, I'm never going to do that again. And then they get back and just get me to shore. Huh? But then there's a calm day and a wonderful day, and sailboating has a nice kind of giftedness to it. But if I overgeneralize, I won't get back on the boat. It's always going to be that way. It's always going to happen. But that's almost another thing of all or nothing thinking again, too. The mental filter, I don't know. You meet people with mental filters? They're all sad all the time. How you doing? It's not good. Everything's bad. Nothing's good. No brightness in the person's sight. They just kind of mosey around, and they're overwhelmed because their vision goes through this negative way of looking at life that just covers everything, and all of a sudden they lose their spirit and have no excitement about life or energy. So it sucks it out of them. So we got to be careful that we don't put on these glasses and wear them all the time. It's good to take off our glasses and know there's another way of looking at life besides this filtered way of life that's been set up. And again, all these things have some of these things have deep roots in them because of growing up in the way we do and things that have happened to us. Going to school with the shoulds. God, we got a shouldy God out of our. The trouble is that was okay for kids, but it's not okay for adults. Okay, it's not okay for adults. Okay, so not that there aren't responsibilities we have, and God's going to call us to do things that are important for us to do. It's just that we have to say God doesn't put a should on it, and the should is. We'll come up to the shoulds. Disqualifying the positive. Huh? Just a very simple thing. I'll just go through this, but you ever get a compliment? And you say, God, it says, hey, you're really a good person. You know, you really did a great job on this today. And I really want to thank you for that. What's our, oh, it was nothing. You start disqualifying it, huh? Anybody could have done this. You're just making something big out of something that was a little thing. So we just can disqualify what people want to offer us as a gift. And somehow we lose the power of it. Even sometimes receiving a gift, huh? Somebody wants to give us a gift, huh? We would probably say, I'd rather give a gift than get one. But when you're given a gift that's given by saying thank you with gratitude, then you can receive the gift. And that's a wonderful way of movement, because that's the way we move with God and God's grace, huh? Grace is always a gift. And God's presence is always a gift. If somehow we don't receive it and be thankful for it, we're going to miss it. We're going to miss it. And then life's going to have some kind of a hole in our life that's not being able to be taken care of because of this some kind of disqualifying a positive movement of somebody's giftedness to us. Jumping to conclusions. I always think this is a hidden one that comes up a lot of times. I keep saying that one of the things that's annoying to me is when somebody thinks for me and tells me how I am, or tells me what I like, or tells me that this is what I should be doing. People who have their own way of framing things and then putting it on somebody else and saying, this is the way it is, and I know this person really likes this thing because I know it, but I'm mind reading. The biggest thing to do is check it out. Would you like this, huh? Or would you prefer something different? Not to say, oh, he's really gonna, or she's really gonna like this. And it gets to be a difficulty. I was at a rectory one time, and the cook at the rectory came out and she made spinach. Said, oh, I really love spinach. Well, I got spinach for the next 8 days. There's a mind reading saying, oh, he loves spinach, so he's going to love this every time I get it. After the third day, I said, whoa, come here. Stop. So that mental filtering here. And fortune telling is another kind of thing that we kind of tell, we have a way of saying this is what's going to happen. We set it up in some kind of way of our own thoughts that kind of put something together and want to predict the future of like tonight it's going to rain. Fortunately, everybody here is going to feel bad for this raining. Well, that would be fortune telling. Everybody's going to have that kind of thing. I know what the future is going to bring, and I know what the answer is for everybody else. It's sort of like mind reading, but it has that sense of setting it up as a future event. You're really going to like this when I give this to you. You know, on the 8th day of spinach, yes. You're really going to like this. No, thank you. Anyway, magnification and minimization. We sure can magnify certain things that happen. And when we magnify that kind of movement of life, it gets out of hand. For instance, I can magnify an adventure and say, this is the best vacation I ever had and will ever have. Huh? I magnify it to a point where all the other vacations aren't going to be any, and nobody's going to be able to compete with that. I magnify it so much that it's out of hand. Or I magnify a sense of a belief that I have, like, let's go up to North Philadelphia and walk around where the black area is, that black people are. And just go let's go knock on some doors and visit some people. We can magnify the sense of safety that's not there. Huh? So we've got to be careful about balancing things out and being thoughtful about it. Being streetwise, that's a big thing. Or minimization, we can minimize it. And that gets us in trouble. I had a roommate that had a stomach pain and he was really hurting. I said, yeah, get the doctors to see that. His wife kept telling him, gotta get a doctor. It's nothing. He died a year later of cancer that he could have lived by, which was a simple operation for the cancer he had, but didn't. But that minimization, that's nothing. I get over that, you know. Or some people say, I got a cold, I'll be all right. It might be COVID, it might be something worse than that. So we minimize some of the things that happen to us. And living into that minimization will take us away from what the truth really is. Then we have the emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning. That's another thing. Because I feel it is so. Because I feel it is so. Because I feel tense about going out, then that's the way it's going to be. This feeling just comes in and says, I got a feeling that, buddy has it, I got a feeling that Notre Dame's going to beat Navy by 30 points. Well, they bet on it and lost. And so the feeling didn't make it happen. The feeling led them into difficulty. So we don't want to just move on a feeling. It's better to have a sense of awareness of what really is that we're dealing with, rather than be moved by an emotional kind of response that sometimes carries away from being reasonable. The should, ought, must, have to. I'm big on this one. I think if you can just listen to people's language, how many shoulds, oughts, needs, have tos, and musts are in their language? It's legion to me. It's legion, and for themselves, even for me, I have to catch myself because there's an automatic movement in my life to use that word, those words, and sometimes I'll be in it and I'll say it, and I'll step back and rephrase what I'm saying to get rid of to eliminate the should in there. The problem with the shoulds is, the should is a setting up of an expectation. Huh? Now, people who like to please other people, you know, like if I just go around, if I do this for you, you'll feel good, and then I'll feel good. Or Mom, if I make, again, parents give us power over their feelings. Like my mother said, you made me happy, or you made me angry, or you made me sad. I got this, as a kid, that's terrible power to have over your parents, that you can make them happy, sad, or whatever. And sometimes we carry that through life. And so we try to do the things that they want us to do to make them happy and meet their expectations so that they can be happy and I can be happy. That's a codependent kind of relationship that really gets caught in a way that takes us from being able to live life. The other thing is, if you're using this idea, you should, or you have to, you must, you need to, you're angry at them. It's an anger about something about the person, because they're not doing what you want them to do, they're not meeting your expectation of what your should is. So there's a danger in that framework of that language, and some people don't understand it, that they're feeling uncomfortable in the presence of somebody, not even know why, but they're filled with shoulds and trying to put that on people, and all of a sudden the person's starting to feel overwhelmed by unconsciously about all the things they should do or have to do or ought to do in order for this person to be okay, so I can please them. So a heavy issue on that piece of it. And just pay attention when you go around about the language of a lot of people. We got a lot of shouldy people. Huh? A lot of shouldy people.
What would you say? It would be nice if.
It would be nice if.
You don't say nothing.
No. It would be better if. It'd be helpful. You know, it'd be helpful if you did this. You should do this. No, it'd be helpful if you did this. It'd be better if you did this. I think you would feel. I get a sense you would feel better if you did this. But not to have this expectation. You should do this. You got to do this. You ought to do this. As soon as you put that, and what people will do unconsciously is back off, because people don't like to be told what to do. A lot of times. There's some people in here like that? Don't like to be told what to do?
I was just thinking, like, what can you do for people besides yourself? I mean, that you live with or work with or whatever, who do that all the time? Like, besides, what do? Redirect them or just ignore them?
I don't, no, I just
Them a lot?
I just rephrase it.
No, but them.
I know, I would just rephrase their language. If somebody says, you shouldn't go ride a bike at your age. I said, you think it would be better if I didn't ride a bike? It is. But my sense is, to get caught in the shouldyishness of it, that's a mess. That's what's hard. I don't think the response is that bad. I think the response is kind of a nice one, because I'll just help people. It'd be like, you could say, huh?
It might be better if you didn't ride a bike, right?
Well, it could be. It could be. It's not, it could be. However, right at this point in time, from my experience, which is another thing that I'll come to about it, who's making the decision out of whose experience? They're projecting experience on me. If they thought that they were that age, they wouldn't do it. But I am at that age, and I do it, and I know I can do it, because I do it. And I enjoy it. Good, Joanna, good. Okay, I'm just going through this again. Labeling. Be careful about labeling, huh? Sticks and stones will break my, they'll never hurt me, huh? That was an old thing about naming things about people, huh? Using labels on people. This you are is a bad thing, huh? But watch out what you say you are. You may say you're a nice person, that's good, huh? But say you're a louse, huh? Or you're no good, or you're a bum, or whatever that movement is that you put on a person. First of all, it's false to begin with, huh? We're giving them a title, something that defines who they are by a label. Son of God, your beloved daughter of God. So you are, huh? Oh, put it on people, because it's a non-truth, huh? They came up with this, you're a blasphemer. I don't know, I'm a blasphemer. And Jesus doesn't get upset with it because he knows he's not a blasphemer. He's not Beelzebub, huh? He doesn't tell the lies, he tells the truth. And so there's that movement of labeling, but just be conscious of that you are, huh? You are. We're conscious of that. Then personalization. This is another hard one for people. It comes out of the fact that people have judgments about us. And oftentimes, when people have judgments about us, we listen to it, huh? Somehow we listen to it. And Jesus says, don't judge, huh? Don't judge people. That's God's thing to do. But people will come up and use judgments about us and say something about us in a judgmental way, and people take it as though there's a truth in that. There's not a truth in the judgments that people make. That's just their opinion. Plus the fact right. They may be speaking out of a distorted framework of looking at things. And so, that happens though. Once you get caught up in this accepting someone's judgment of you, like you're lazy. Oh, I'm lazy. And then I gotta say, oh God, that's a judgment about me. I'm a lazy person. I don't know if then I don't know what to do with it sometimes. Well, maybe I'll try to not be lazy anymore. I'll get up and do things all the time. And then one day I find myself sitting in the chair and lazy again. But whatever it is, the title is to take it personally. I start to feel sometimes guilty. Judgments move with this idea about feeling guilty. Huh? When people start judging our behavior and putting it on us, and making that a definition or a judgment about us rather than the behavior. So that's what personalization means. We listen to people talk about our behavior and take it personally, huh? And think that they're talking about us. Not a good thing to do. It gets us in trouble. And when we do that, when we go after people or we speak about them in a personal kind of framework, we're going to start a tension. We're going to start a great tension. Okay, so it's not good to make judgments on people. We can make judgments on their behavior and keep it there. Then we can have a conversation about people. I talked to couples coming. I see. One of the good things to do when you're in that sense of having a conversation with one another is you can't talk about the other person because you're going to be making judgments about them. So talk about their behavior. You can make judgments about that. So you can come in and say, boy, I'm really angry at the fact that somehow the garage door is left open. That really upsets me. How do you see that? But I come in and say, I'm really upset with you for leaving the door open. Now the person's going to get defensive. You're upset. We ought to see the things you do. So it gets into a battle. Uh-oh. Conway, that's that movement. It's really important to be careful about, because as soon as you get into this contention with one another, there's no longer conversation. Conversation just falls away. You're not talking about anything. So I always tell people to come in, whatever you want to talk about, you can talk about any kind of behavior, put it on the table, not on the person. Okay? Put it on the table and say, this is upsetting me. This I'm angry about. This I don't like. Even with kids, it's a good thing to do. Huh? Just don't go out and say, you. Huh? Watch that finger point. Point to the behavior on the table, not at the person. Because as soon as we point it at somebody, we got tensions coming all over the place because people are going to feel judged and they're going to have to defend themselves, and then they're going to come back in some kind of way of making judgments to offset the way they're feeling. 728. So let me just go through this. If you have the sheet, you can take it home. Addressing our distorted thinking. Huh? One of the ways we do that is accept the feelings that are a gift from God, so that we can embrace them, not bury them, not hide them. Now, one of the difficult issues with some kind of feelings are that they're really in a recessed place. Huh? They're hard to get to for some people. It takes sometimes it takes good therapy. PTSD, people go through war issues. They have to repress the feeling because it was too overwhelming at the time. The trouble is it doesn't go away. And until they can get back to it and deal with it in a way that they can handle it without repressing it, then they can get freed of it. But it's going to keep coming. It's going to have an effect on them. My brother, I remember he came back from Nam. Car went down, backfired. Boom, he was underneath the bed. Just reaction out of this whole thing about his experience, and that experience has set up behaviors for him, and he followed those behaviors because they were ways of protecting himself. But they haven't, a lot of times, even, I don't know what well anyway, I don't have any idea. I know that, I don't think I could shoot somebody, so I don't know. So war would be really a terrible thing. I'd be a medic, I guess, something. But just to have that happen, what a traumatic experience that is. or to go into a place and see a lot of bodies down there dead and your good friend shot. Those are traumatic kind of experiences, and especially when you're at a place like in a war, you can't stop and say, let's take a month of mourning here. I'll sit here and mourn. You got to move on. So the only way you do that is repress it. You repress it. And so people have different ways of trying to deal with some of those repressed feelings. Now, it's good for us to recognize too that sometimes, a lot of times we'll get angry, and it's coming anger that we haven't dealt with that we're projecting onto other people. It's really important to own our own anger and not put it on somebody else. And that's a helpful thing. But sometimes we're not even sure what we're angry about that we went through in life with, because sometimes we weren't allowed to be. I wasn't allowed to be angry. I had to pray for my anger to be alive in me again. Because you're angry, I'll give you something to be angry at. Whack! Agree. But
Phrase, right? Phrase.
oh yeah.
I'll give you something to be angry.
But there's that movement of life where a lot of those things happen, and because they're so tied up, and they get formed unconsciously in us, but they keep jumping up without it, almost again unconsciously, without us being aware of it. And a lot of people will build up angers, and all of a sudden, geez, some little thing will happen, and a volcano goes over, because they haven't dealt with the feelings. They just keep repressing them, and they keep building up, and they don't go away. So they explode like a volcano, and then you go, what do I do now? That's just overwhelming in some kind of way of movement. And the invitation is, well, it's good to find some kind of way to get back to repressed prayers, where we couldn't be, or somebody didn't listen to us when we were younger and had a conversation. It was just repressed. So addressing all those distorted I always say it's good to pray to the Lord to help us to be attentive. Let me be attentive to what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing. There's another thing here in this idea of keep ourselves as a self-context. Huh? What's going on in my own life, by the way I feel, is inside me, not out there. Huh? I mean, things will happen out there, but what makes me feel is how I see it. What I think about it. And that can come in many kinds of ways of people having, somebody can go out there and see somebody get run over by a car and say, hey, and somebody say, hey, you got something, how about that? The other guy says, oh, that's terrible. Two people looking at it will have different feelings according to how they see it and think about it. And that happens in our own life too. So the self-context is, keep drawing into myself that my feelings are coming from within me and the thoughts that I'm having, not because of what's going on out there. That sort of spurs it on, but it's the thoughts I have about what's going on that if I can keep them in here, I can work with that. I can't change that world out there. Does that make sense? But I can change the thoughts that I have inside me. I said that before. I remember down the hill, saying, oh my God, I got to give a homily today. Oh, geez, why did somebody else do that? That's all that poor me kind of stuff. I said, wait a minute. If I walk in with that kind of attitude, that's really going to affect how I say and what I say. So if I can change the way I'm seeing it, it'll be different for me. So if I change it and say, no, this is really an opportunity. This is an opportunity to speak on God's behalf, to say something that hopefully the people can be helped by. So let me move with that kind. So there's a different spirit. And I'll act differently because my spirit's different because of that, because of those thoughts that I have that I can change and move the way to change the way I feel. So that self-context is within me. I can deal with those thoughts within me and change them, and then I can deal with the world. Jesus could change the way he thought about the crucifixion. He went in the agony of the garden. Get me out of here. I don't want to do this. And then all of a sudden he says, ooh, I can't get out of this because another principle came up, I would be denying myself. So I got to be authentic to myself and to what my movement is of teaching people about how you deal with injustice and abuse and mistreatment and so he has this sense of making a choice of how he's going to deal with that. He's going to deal with it in consistency, what he taught everybody else. That love your enemies, huh? Don't treat violence with violence. Move with a compassionate care for people, even the people who are going to deny you. And so, but his groundedness was good because it was one with the Father. Huh? That's always a good thing for us. We're one with Father, yeah, we're good. One with Jesus, yeah, we're good. So that movement has an important invitation for us to be conscious of this journey of living life. So the self-context is another very important factor. Like recognizing that the problems that I'm experiencing are within me with these voices, because it all depends on how these voices are framing what I'm seeing and framing the reality that I'm in contact with. And if it's a negative kind of feeling, I'm going to feel depressed, upset, anxious, whatever it might be. So, as long as it's in us, we have power over to control. We don't have a control outside the world that happens. I'm going to say another thing that I find very helpful is for everybody to have a sacred word. One of the things that's important when something's going on or something doesn't feel, my prayer is always I draw God's presence to be with me. And I draw God's presence because I have a word that gives me this idea of consenting and to the presence of God and handing myself over to it. That calms me down. Huh? So my secret word is Maranatha. And I don't know how many times I use that 50 times a day. I don't know. But I'll do it in given situations, huh? Coming up, and just to settle me down that my life is to be lived with God's Spirit and God's presence, not the distortions, not the other things, and when I'm starting to feel upset or whatever it is, Maranatha. Because when God comes, God and I will figure out how to address this in a way that brings it back to getting rid of the distortions, living in a truthful way, and finding His promises of peace and comfort and joy. And of course, the of life is, there's an always, there's an every now and then. Movement in life is helpful when we kind of have this sense of connection with God's presence and that we trust in it, I have this overriding thing. I don't know what's going to happen in my life, but whatever's going to happen, as long as God's with me, I trust I'll be okay. I'll be okay. No matter what it is, whatever happens. I go out and get run over by a car, I'll be okay. You know, that type of thing. In the long run, I'll be okay. Jesus had that on the cross. Huh? Great saying that he had when he came down to, how's he going to deal with this? Father, it's in your hands, I commend my spirit. I'm safe there. Whatever else takes place around me and it happens, I can't control that, but I'm safe in your hands. And I know that you'll take care of me. And that there will be, for him, there was resurrection. There's always, in bad situations, resurrection is always a gift we keep looking for after something happens, whether it's tragedy or an upsetness or whatever it is. We can always redeem the unholy in our life because that's the promise that Jesus gave us in his life as he lived it. Okay? All right. We'll end it here. We'll end it there.